Building in public, the do's and don'ts. Um, that's what we're going to take a look at today. KP is considered the founder of the Build in Public movement, I think you could say. The initiator of the Build in Public movement. And in, very short terms, it's really just documenting the process of what you're building publicly. It's not like that specific where it has to be a specific platform or any one methodology. It's just like the opposite of stealth mode, I guess, is the way to think about it. Whereas stealth mode, you're just like, you can't show anybody because it's a secret because your idea is going to get stolen and all of this. Build in public, it's like put everything out there. It's like the polar opposite of stealth mode. Just put everything out there as you're building it. Share as much as you can. And which has the effect of ingratiating you to your target audience, and everyone kind of feels like they're part of the process, which is cool on paper. And I do know people that have been successful using that methodology or adopting this mindset. But I suppose that there has to be some downside to this. Like you can't put everything out there, can you? I don't know. Like, what are the limits of how much you share? Do you share your monthly recurring revenue? I got an itch. It's killing me. Do you share your monthly recurring revenue? Do you share the number of paid users that you have versus what you don't have? I don't know. I question this myself like a lot too. It's like, how much can I put out there? I'm working with clients too, doing freelancing work. So I also have an extra layer of complexity to this where it's, I have to kind of be careful about what I share because I don't know if obviously you shouldn't be sharing any user data or anything like that, right? And how much, if you have an NDA agreement with a client, like how much should you share? So it does get a little complex if you're doing this, if you're working with clients and trying to build in public. But I don't know. I think if there's buy-in on both sides, that it can be a useful way to do things. There's nothing worse than the feeling of being in stealth mode. Like you can't talk about your idea. You can't explain it to anybody. You're like constantly in fear of that someone's going to steal your idea because it's so brilliant and everyone is just out there to get you. That sucks. Like you feel so alone. I've adopted that mentality before. The first project that I ever worked on I kept it in stealth mode. It was so stupid. Like not only was I scared to talk about it with people, but I was scared to even enter into a Google search like questions that I had about the project or questions that I would want to ask, because Google would figure out what I was building and then steal my idea. How fucking stupid is that? But it's like a reality. I think a lot of us go into, especially when you feel like the idea is all you have because you don't have any technical means of building the software that you're thinking about. It feels like the idea is the only tangible thing, even though an idea is not tangible. It feels like the only thing that you have that makes you valuable. So you don't want to give that up. But that is not a good mindset. It's a bad mindset. I can tell you from experience. It causes a lot of problems, a lot of stress, because you've like, where are you going to get the answers to your questions? You're still like such at the beginning of your journey. You're going to have a lot of questions. You're going to like fumble around a lot, and you need to be able to talk to people about this. So. It's not easy if you're a solopreneur, single founder, you're just getting started working on a product. It's really difficult to do that in stealth mode. So we're going to talk about the polar opposite of stealth mode today, throwing caution to the wind around someone potentially stealing your idea, and putting everything out there, or at least let's find some common ground or some limitations of what you should and shouldn't put out there. So this is by MailChimp, this article. the phrase has been bandied about a lot in the past few years, with all manner of business owners revealing the nitty-gritty on social media about how their company is growing with varying results. Here's how to get it right with varying results. So I assume that, like, that means that the benefits of putting all of your business information out there on social media, the benefits are outweighing the risks here, or the downside to it. Whether it's sharing key learnings via Twitter threads, behind the scenes TikToks, reflective Instagram posts, or considered blog posts, plenty of business owners are embracing the sharing spirit and being transparent about what's happening under the hood. But as the most cursory glance will show you, plenty are coming into it with the wrong aims, wrong ethos, and ultimately wrong execution. Kevin Chung, founder of Public Lab, a business advice platform, is a master of the art and has even created a course on making friends on Twitter. So here are some of his essential do's and don'ts when it comes to building in public. Tips for best practice. Use whatever platform feels right. Building in public is all about doing it in front of your target audience. For a brand like Panther, a jacket company, Twitter and LinkedIn aren't right, but Instagram is perfect. Yeah, I imagine, like, if you're going to build in public, the right social media outlet is pretty important. If it's something visual, if it's a physical product that you want people to see, that's probably going to be Instagram. Or, like, short, cool videos that demonstrating the product. Maybe TikTok's right for that. But there does seem to be, like, big tech audiences on Twitter and LinkedIn. It doesn't really matter who you are, as long as you can put the story out and people are reading it. It's all about storytelling. Yeah, true. Approach it from the position of a learner. When you're sharing updates, you have to be a learner yourself. A lot of people make the mistake of pretending that they're an expert and trying to put out wisdom. Ooh, I feel like I do that. I should stop doing that. That doesn't work. In the beginning, it's all about making friends, making connections, and having conversations. Your work will spread, so make friends. So I guess approaching it, like, not so much as, like, I am the authority in this area and you should listen to me because I'm smarter than you. Maybe that's not the best approach to it. Maybe it's like, like, I have this problem and you probably do too. So let's talk about this. That is definitely a more disarming way to approach it, where it's like, I don't know, I guess you can come off as a know-it-all if you're trying to put out like nuggets of wisdom all the time. I guess it's a little unrelatable, is what they're saying here. And yeah, and in order to make friends and build an audience that is going to engage with you, you have to be someone who's relatable, right? You can't just be putting out all of your successes and stuff. People are going to find that inauthentic at some point. Give. Building in public is essentially audience building. That means you need to give, and give. It's all about giving because it's all about credibility and building trust. If people trust you, ultimately they're going to buy anything you create. That's true. It's a weird thing. Like, how do you establish trust with your audience? I think to answer my own question, I think it's just like trying to be as authentic as possible and not showboating or fronting in who you are and your real personality. I think that builds trust with whatever audience you're trying to engage with. Engage in two-way conversations. People are going to gather around you slowly, but at least you have people watching. Ask them questions so that you understand what they're looking for. Ask questions around the product that you're trying to build. In a way, they're helping you build the product. Building in public is like putting people around you. As long as you're open-minded and you listen, you'll build something that people want. Yeah, like that I think takes such of the, like, if you're doing this long term, it takes such of the fear out of the launch process and the mystery of, like, when I set this thing free on the world, will people even care about it, use it, sign up, pay me money? There's so much, if you're working in stealth mode or you're working in a silo, there's so much like fear that you got to like hold inside, because you don't even know if what you're putting so much effort into right now is going to be how it's going to be received. But if you're doing this on an ongoing basis and very early in your build process, then that takes the mystery right out. Like, you know that you're building something that people want because people are engaging with you. People are telling you, no, that looks stupid there. That doesn't make sense there. Can you move it over here? And that's a lot more easy. Even as simple as, like, there was a tweet last week that I pointed out. Let me see if I can find it. It was so simple, but it was smart. Is it Dennis? Let me see if I can find this. It was just about like the positioning of a button for this. Wasn't Anna? I think it was this dude, Daniel. This right here. This is like a prime example of build in public. And it's so simple. Twitter friends, A or B. And look how many responses he got. He got 130 likes. And he got valuable feedback from, I assume this is he's building something for this audience of people that responded. But this is all it is. It's just like, hey, what do you guys like better, this or this? And A was the overwhelming choice. But that's something so simple like that to do, and you're getting free, valuable feedback, and you're including people in your build process, which is so much nicer than working in a silo or working in private. You're getting free, valuable feedback. So okay, so this too, if you have a full product, like if you have a platform built and you're getting users, or you're trying to like bring an audience to it, and you say, okay, here's my platform. Like you'll email some maybe friends that you know that you think may be interested. Here's my platform. Let me know what you think. How are they going to know what kind of feedback that you're looking for? That's so tough. They don't know what context. Do you mean, do I like the design of it? Do I know how to use it? Is it easy for me to understand what to do here? There's so many questions. Whereas like that example that we just looked at is so clear what he's asking. It's like button better here, button better here. A/B testing. Done. But like if you're giving someone a whole platform to like give you feedback on, you have to give them some parameters as to what kind of feedback you're looking for. And that's like already going to be more difficult to do once you have like all of your pages built out, because there's just a lot to it. There's a lot to review, and people's time is limited. They can't just spend, not everyone's going to be willing to sit down and spend 4 hours reviewing your site and giving you their notes on it. That's not a way to collect feedback. That's a big ask for whoever you're asking that to. But if you're asking these little micro nuggets of feedback over a long period of time, that may amount to the same amount of information, but you're not doing it in such a you're not asking the person who you're requesting feedback from for such a commitment. It's just like a quick tweet, like, that's way easier. Know when to stop or change what you share. This is about sharing the journey. The fewer people involved, the easier it is. It's a lot better for the personal brand and the personal voice. When you're a startup with 20 to 30 people, it gets complicated. What can you share? For example, there may come a point where sharing numbers could make it complicated to run your business. As you grow, adjust how much you share and the frequency. It's still the same mindset because at the end of the day, it's still about being open and building trust. But when you get to a certain team or revenue size, there might be hesitation at that stage. At that stage, it's not common to be building in public. So I can understand that, right? Like, do you really want to be putting your revenue out there for other people to know? Like, wouldn't that kind of put you at a disadvantage in some cases? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like competitor. If like your competitor wanted intel on you and you're just putting your revenue out there freely, could that put you in a potentially bad situation? Maybe it does. I don't know. So I guess like what you share is also important, right? In the beginning, when you first get your first user and you're like, yes, I got my first 10 users, I'm making $600 in monthly recurring revenue. Like, I don't think anyone can use that against you. But maybe that becomes more problematic, like they're saying here, when you're a startup of 20 or 30 people, and there is some competitive intelligence that you want to keep to yourself. I have to believe that that's true at some point. But when you get to the certain team size, things to avoid: expecting to get an audience overnight. It's very slow. Yes, it is. It is very slow. Building any audience is a slog. Not a slog, but it is definitely slow. It's a process. I don't know what the key is because I'm still finding mine. I'm still finding out what I want to talk about. I'm still finding what is helpful to people. And hopefully there's some overlap there. But it is definitely difficult to build an audience, and it takes time. I think it takes time and consistency. I like to think that it takes time and consistency over anything else. As long as you're putting out quality content that's going to be helping people. But I want to believe that time and consistency are key here. You can start sharing your journey for a couple of weeks and expect a lot to come back. You can't start sharing your journey. 16 months ago, I started writing about a guide to build in public. The first time I spoke about it, I hadn't written a word. I just put it out there. I got like 4 likes because I didn't have any followers, then 7, then 10. People didn't pay much attention to when you're starting, but over time, when they see that you're serious, that's where the trust and credibility kicks in. It's not good to set big expectations at first. Yeah, because I think whenever you start anything, like any project, anything that you're doing as an endeavor, like overcommitting yourself in the beginning is definitely like you feel like you're trapped into that commitment. And I think that's even more demotivating, right? Like because you feel like you're not reaching the goal that you set for yourself, or you're not disciplined enough to achieve it. So if you're overcommitting to an audience, or you're putting this in public, like you're committing something straight away. I'm going to do this. I'm going to post something new every day for the next 365 days. That's a big commitment. Do you really want to commit to that? Like, before you even know whether you're going to, there's going to be some kind of positive feedback loop on what you're doing. Because the worst thing that you can do is put things out there and not get any response. Even if you get some negative feedback, like, that's better than getting no response at all, is you just feel like you're talking to no one, and like you're gonna get discouraged. But I definitely like this. Don't say, even for you. I think this, like, I interpret this as like internally too. Don't set such high expectations even for yourself. Like, just be okay with, KP actually said this. He said, be okay with just being in Q1 for 6 months to a year. Q1 meaning like the first quarter of the game, where you're just deciding whether or not this is something that you want to pursue, or whether it's valuable. Hang on, I got a message from Restream. Whether or not, yeah, something you want to pursue, and also just something that, like, is there anything there? Is there anything there? Whatever you're pursuing, whether it's a product or a software idea or a YouTube channel, whatever it is, just like be okay that, like, you have to expect that you're going to spend quite a bit of time in Q1 just deciding whether or not you want to keep going. I think is the big takeaway from that. Yeah, I've definitely that resonated. People think instantly, "Oh my god, I need to share my journey. I need to share everything." People need to I need to share everything. That can be a barrier that stops people from doing it. But this isn't much different from other types of content marketing. Why do people need to listen to you? A lot of people put out their daily to-dos, and think that they're building in public and no one cares. Who cares what you're doing today? What they care about is what they can learn from you. Always package it in a way that someone can learn something from you. Okay, so there's got to be like a fine balance there, from coming off like a know-it-all and being somebody who is teaching. I think that's an artful skill to master. It's like teaching people without them feeling like you're talking at them or talking over them. I think definitely that was something that I was mindful of when we were doing the bubble boot camps. Is like, I don't want anyone here to feel like they don't belong, right? They don't have enough technical experience to be here. That was one of the big challenges too, because the range of technical experience that people had was so varied. There were people that were like they could code, and they were trying, and they wanted some help learning bubble, and the people in that same class had never done anything technical in their life outside of like Excel, and trying to manage those two people in the same class was challenging. That was challenging. One is bored, one is behind. So, but at the same sense, I think how I wanted to do that was just to talk to, like, learn what their level of understanding is, and then speak to them at that level, right? Like that is kind of the challenge of any, I guess, educator, is to find that balance, like, and address. And the classes were small enough where I could be speaking to individual people. The maximum there was 8. But that still is like, all right, I'm talking to Steve right now, has no idea what a database is, and Jimmy over here who's been a software engineer for 5 years. You're talking to them. You're going to use different terms and different you, like, recognizing where they are in their understanding is, I think, the artful part, right? That's more of a human touch. But either way, I was intimidated when developers, like the programmers, would come into the boot camp, because I'm like, shit, they know so much more than me because they have so much years in tech. But there was still something valuable that I was teaching them. I was still teaching them how to apply what they already know in a totally different environment. And that's why when I got over that, that was more of like when I was like, all right, they're still, like, we can learn from each other here. I can benefit. I can learn from them in the way that they think about things, because that's definitely helpful. Talking to, someone with technical experience definitely broadens my understanding of how Bubble works and how these platforms work. Because it's that's hard to do. I constantly reach out to my brother, who has a 4-year computer science degree, and just like I just explained to him, like, this is what's happening in the app, like, broad context, outside of Bubble terms, like outside of anything. Like, how would you think about this as a developer? Because I don't know, because I don't have that education and background. There was another post saying like, oh, people spend 100K on a CS degree for things that they can learn on YouTube. There's some truth to that, but it's not just coding. It's not just programming. There's still a broader technical knowledge that you'll acquire by going through a 4-year degree. And I don't have that. So I have to lean on people that have that experience in order to um in order to like, help my own understanding. And Kelly Claus said something interesting yesterday too about like the overwhelming shame for not knowing things. I thought was really funny, because it's true. It's like you don't want to admit sometimes that you don't know stuff, but you don't know shit. Like, I don't know a lot of things. I think I could. There's definitely areas of even in Bubble that I could do better. Like probably the design stuff mostly, but like admitting that and just being honest about that, I think is hard. It's hard for me, so I assume other people struggle with that as well. But even though I'm not the best designer, I can still say with confidence, like, I can help you with your Bubble problems because I've probably come across them before. Right? So like, just because I'm like lagging in one area doesn't mean that I don't have useful knowledge to share in another one. And that's how I think, like, mentally I kind of get over that. Imitating others. You don't have to share what other people are sharing. Everyone has a different audience and environment. It's important to figure out what the people around you want and then be the captain for them. Okay. Assuming you need to be extroverted, the ultimate building in public people are YouTubers. They're always showing what they're doing. But a platform like Twitter is a place for people who are more introverted. Really? Why? I wonder why. It doesn't matter what kind of personality type you are. It's just about practicing the rhythm of sharing and being okay with public criticism. People are going to give you all kinds of feedback, and it takes practice to build up those muscles for receiving feedback. Yeah, I think if you're thinking of feedback, feedback is not an insult, right? Like there's that first, even when you put a piece of content out there on Twitter or YouTube or anything, there's that first thing when you see that comment, you're like, oh shit, what are they saying? What did they think of this? And I would say, like, the positive stuff, if you're putting content out there in good faith, I would say the positive stuff probably is going to outweigh the negative. But of course, we focus on the negative part. But that's not it. As long as the person's not like a dick, they're probably trying to give you some feedback that you really shouldn't take so personal. I think it's a hard thing to do. Expecting business outcomes from it. I think a lot of people want to grow an audience because they think that it's going to power their business, but an audience and customers are not equal. Fair point. I have 9,000 followers on Twitter. I have 8,000 aren't my customers. You need to be okay with that and still help people, even if they won't buy from you. That's what an audience building is. It's about conversations, interactions, and most founders just don't think of it this way. Yeah. Let's see what else we have on KP's site, Build in Public. I wonder if he posts. Does he post? I know he does the podcast, but does he? I think this is him. Does he post like blogs and stuff or content like that? I know he's building an audience on YouTube now too. All of these are failery. How did build in public surge? It's unclear when and how building in public surged, but it can be said that Joel can't say that. Co-founder and CEO of Buffer was one of the pioneers. In 2013, Buffer published their culture deck in which they claimed default to transparency to be their second value, default to transparency. That's interesting. I like that. Default to transparency. They started working towards radical transparency, and over the years, they became public about their revenue, users, numbers, employees' salaries, and equity options. Wow, so that's interesting. See, like that's in contrast to what that the other article was saying. That there's a certain point where you can't share this stuff anymore, and Buffer did it. The founder loved community's Buffer decision and supported Joel along the way. Users became excited about the company and turned into more loyal customers. The team enjoyed more trust. Ghost becomes transparent in 2014. Founder claims that they would follow Buffer's footsteps and become more transparent about their numbers and work. So, I mean, this is also established companies who were sharing things like their revenue and their culture guides and their probably the number of paying users that they have and all that stuff. But I think in the beginning, when you're first starting out, it's more about what product you're building and how you think it could help people. Those are the things that you're sharing. Peter Levels, the CEO of Open Startups in early 2018. Peter Levels, founder of Nomad List and Remote OK, joined the Built in Public Hub with this tweet. Let's see what tweet it was. Nomad Data is now an open startup, and they trademarked Open Startup, sharing all of its revenue data and user metrics. Damn. Here's the open dashboard. So they literally post all of this. Whoa. Annual run rate. It's pretty cool. Imagine if all companies started doing this. It would take the mystery of the quarterly earnings report. Probably have some effects on the stock market. Why build in public? Building in public has a series of benefits. Here's 5 that I've identified over the last years. Getting feedback early. You're building a channel through which you can communicate with support groups and customers who will be happy to provide you with feedback on your features, ideas, designs, and strategies. Yep, we've talked about that. Increase buy-in. People love being heard. When you ask for feedback and apply your users or potential customers' comments in their investments in your company increase, and they feel as if they have a part in it. Yeah, we've talked about that too. So that's an interesting one. I wasn't showing, but it increased. Like when people are part of your build process, they feel like, or you're involving them as much as you can. They feel like they're a part of it, and that's a really cool spot to be in. Builds trust. You'll be building a strong connection with your customers, which increases the chances that they help you when you need it, become recurring customers, or recommend your products and services to other people. And especially, I think especially too, because they found you early on before, it's kind of cool to know about a product or like even like a band, right? Like if you think of it like musically, like from the music perspective, if you knew about a band before they got popular, like you feel cool You feel like you were kind of ahead of a curve on that trend. And I think this is the same concept. They'll feel like, yeah, this is, I was an early adopter of this, and I have good taste. Build your status as a field expert. If you're the most public person in your niche, the niche will be immediately associated with you every time someone talks about it. I've been building failery in public for some time now, constantly publishing about failed startups. When someone tweets about the topic, I'm generally tagged in comments. So people eventually come to you when you start doing this stuff. Attract talent and investors. The more exposure your startup gets, the more people interested in joining or investing in it. People like transparency, whether it's in a workplace or portfolio of companies. Okay. So a few thoughts there on build in public. I'm sure that some people are more comfortable with it than others. I know Neil Pierce is a big proponent of it. He built Atomic Fusion pretty much in public for the bubble community on Twitter. So like some people are more comfortable with it than others. And I tend to lean towards the transparency model too. I could never quite, even in companies that I've worked for, I could never figure out the benefits of keeping financial data private. One of the companies that I worked for was incredibly open about their profit and loss, so much so that every department would get a profit and loss report every month. And then everyone else would be able to see how they trended against what their budgets were. And I thought that was like really advanced because I never saw that in any other company that I worked for. And it was like it kept people accountable. There was no mystery around where budget is going or where funds are being allocated in one department over another. Like everybody just knew. And I think it made for better collaboration. And there's another company that hit it, and everything was a mystery, and like no one knew where they stand. No one knew where they stood. So I like that. I like that transparency. Okay. Hopefully tomorrow I'm gonna have Jared, is it? No, it's not Jared. Tomorrow I have Jared. Yes, Jared Gibb. He is going to be showing us how he implements Figma designs in Bubble, which is something that I'm interested in. I mentioned before about the design stuff that I need to brush up on. So I think this will be helpful for me certainly. And if you are curious about how Figma designs become Bubble apps, I think that'll be interesting. So check in tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I will catch you tomorrow.